to our chamber. Nice to be back officially into our building. If I could please just begin with a statement of acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional owners of this land in which we are meeting and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and those from other communities who are with us today. For they hold the memories, the traditions and the culture of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 3 is apologies and requests for leave of absence. Do we have any? I don't think so. No. Declarations under Acts, regulations, codes and local laws.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare a late item. With the agreement of Council, it is proposed to introduce a late item of urgent business entitled the Election Period Policy to be numbered in the agenda as item 8.9, with a recommendation that an item of urgent business, Election Period Policy, be included in the agenda as item 8.9. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have someone move that we accept that late item? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Is there anybody who needs to speak against accepting that late item? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. There is no other CO? No. Item 5 is declarations by councillors of any conflict of interest. Is there any this evening? Not that I'm aware of. Thank you. Item 6 is confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. The recommendation is there on the bottom of page 3. May I have someone move that recommendation to accept those minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Thank you, Councillor Hall. Does anybody wish to speak against that? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 7.1 is the MAV Annual Conference, of which I was actually the delegate, so I'll be breaking a bit of protocol, but it makes sense that I move it, given I was the person there. Would somebody please second? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillors, if you will just indulge me, I'm just going to run quickly through a couple of the highlights of attending this conference. It is our state conference that's held with our peak body, and there was a couple of pretty interesting topics. First and foremost was the address from the Minister of Local Government and his commentary around the new legislation. He did cover off a few of those. That has since been released and is sitting before Parliament as we speak. There will be quite a few changes, should it get through Parliament, that will impact the 2020 elections at this stage, but there was some good discussion in and around that. The other presentation that was the most worthy of note for me was actually one around climate change, and it's very apt that I speak about that tonight when we have a plastics policy up. And interestingly, it was actually delivered by a lawyer, and she talked very much about being green, but being green through a very different lens, being green through money. And the impacts of climate change, particularly around local government and the impacts on infrastructure and the cost that that might come to bear on communities into the very near future. In fact, some of them are already experiencing, and we have, in terms of some large flooding issues, and probably pretty apt given our fires up in our northern states. So it was a very interesting discussion around, very much around facts and around statistics, but it was also about saying how, as a sector, do we actually look at this going forward? Are we going to be insurable, and what does that look like? How are we making sure as a sector that we step forward and actually build into our processes when we build new infrastructure and take into account climate change and the impacts that it may or may not have on whether it be our stormwater, whether it be where our homes are because of fire, etc., etc. It was a really great presentation. I'm actually waiting for the overheads, and when I get those, councillors, I'm very happy to share them because there was some really interesting insights. I think what was most evident was the sector itself is really just starting to grapple with it. How are we going to deal with this going forward? And I think, sadly, sometimes impacts such as the fires that we're seeing in our northern states will actually push forward some of those changes and some of that legislative change to be addressed. Then, councillors, in the afternoon, we actually had to attend a Regional Cities Victoria meeting as well as going back for the close of the conference. And then there on the Friday for voting. So, councillors, it was a meeting that I think I've been to on several occasions now, and it is our state meeting, so it is one that is important and absolutely relevant to attend. Councillors, if you had any questions of me, I'm happy to take any. No? Councillors, if that's the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.1 is the election of Deputy Mayor. Councillors, the process for dealing with this item is there on page 14. Councillors, do I have someone propose a... I'm just going to make sure I do this. Do I need to put... Councillors, I just want to check something. Okay, councillors, so the two options are there. You can either move option 1 or option 2. Do I have someone move to put somebody's name forward as Deputy Mayor? Inundated. Councillor Watson? Could you please put your microphone on?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Brian Mitchell.
Sorry, Councillor Watson, it's my error. We need to actually call that an election be held for the position of Deputy Mayor for a term of 1 year. Councillors, is somebody happy to move that as part 1 and then we'll move to part 2? Part 1, thank you. Councillor Lowe, you happy to second that? Councillor Watson, does anybody wish to speak against that? No, I'll put the motion. That is that the election be held for the position of Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. My apologies, Councillor Watson. Back to you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd very much like to nominate Councillor Brian Mitchell.
Councillors, can I call for a seconder on that? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Mitchell, at this point, do you accept that nomination? Thank you. Councillors, is there any other nominations? If not, Councillor Mitchell, I declare you Deputy Mayor. No. Councillor, yep, that's it. Well done. Thank you. No changing of chairs. Congratulations. And I look forward to working very closely with you. And can I at this point just say thank you to Councillor Bennett for taking on the role for the last 12 months, particularly where I had some significant time off. Thank you very much for backing me up and being a great Deputy Mayor. Go quickly.
I just wanted to thank the other councillors for giving me this honour, because it was an honour. I really, really enjoyed the role. And I think it's actually really important that we do have a deputy. Particularly, one of the reasons is because we actually have a really amazing, effective mayor. And so she literally can pick up the phone and call amazing people in state government, in federal government. She can call the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia. That's pretty epic for a mayor to do. So because she has so much work to do, that's why I think it's really critical that we have the role of a Deputy Mayor. And one of the things I've really loved about this role is doing lots of work with schools, and I know our Mayor does that as well. And it's always amazing when boys and girls say, oh, there's a girl in the deputy role and a girl as the Mayor. And, once upon a time, not that long ago, we had a female in the CEO role too. So I think it's so important for boys and girls to see women who are in leadership roles through all their hard work to get there. And also, I take my hat off to any parents of young children that are councillors. You do an absolutely phenomenal effort.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. After your afternoon of minding a child. Thank you very much. And again, congratulations to Councillor Mitchell. Councillors, item 8.2, 2020 council meeting dates. Councillors, the recommendation is there on page 17. Do I have someone move that or want to move an alternative? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Did you want to talk to that, Councillor Watson? Councillor Bennett, did anybody wish to speak to that or speak against it? It would be a strange thing to do, but at any rate, councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is there before us. All those in favour? Councillor Mitchell? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Just checking. Item 8.3 is the appointments to committees. There's been a couple of shuffle arounds on this, councillors. Thank you for collaborating and cooperating. Good to see a nice spread across all councillors. Can I have someone move that these positions be accepted? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Mitchell, did you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's really pleasing to see that councillors are getting involved in these committees, and it's actually spread across the range of councillors. There's a really good mix there, which is exceptional to see. Thank you.
Councillors, you are being very cooperative tonight. Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.4 is the sponsorship request. There is just one group being considered tonight. The recommendation is there on page 25. Can I have some, thank you, Councillor Watson, fast out the gate tonight. Anybody else who'd like to second that? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson. So, councillors, I've just been informed that we need to make sure that we are determining that it is $3,000 to the Wodonga Rotary Club as sponsorship, as is dictated in the report in and around their senior citizens, the 65th Senior Citizens Christmas luncheon. So, councillors, that the sponsorship request from Wodonga Rotary Club of $3,000 be approved. Councillor Watson, are you happy for that slight amendment? Yes. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Did you want to speak to that, Councillor Watson?
Madam Mayor, I've attended with the mayors of the day on this event each year. It's one of those amazing days that the Rotary Club, Wodonga Rotary Club, provide for our citizens, more our elderly citizens, those that have some disability. And it's a day that they can get out and have some enjoyment and some fun and a bit of joy in their life. So it's been going for such a long period of time. It's a great thing for our community and may continue.
Thank you. Yeah, I had the privilege of volunteering last year to this event, and was amazed at how many it actually supports. All the people there thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm pleased that Council are continuing to support it going forward.
Probably just highlight, say a big thank you to the Rotary Club and also all the volunteers that go down on the day, because it's the hands and legs on the ground that make these events happen, and without volunteers, some of these events just wouldn't get off the ground. So I'd just like to thank them.
Thank you, councillors. It was a great event last year, as it has been every other year, and it is absolutely well enjoyed. Councillors, the motion is there before us. I'm just going to read it so that everybody's clear that the sponsorship request from Wodonga Rotary Club of $3,000 be approved. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.5, Community Engagement Policy Review and Update. The policy is there as attached. Can I have someone move that to accept it? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thanks, Councillor Watson. No comments, Councillor Watson? Anything? No. Is there any other comment from any other councillor? No. Councillors, if you just indulge me, a community engagement policy is actually probably, aside from the budget, one of the most important ones that we do in terms of being able to communicate with every citizen that we have, and we certainly give it a good go to get to as many people in many different ways as we can. So whether it be taking on new social media, whether it be face-to-face in our new community forums, or even just getting out in the street and speaking with people. Speaking with people means that we are better informed and can certainly reflect our community and their wishes in the best possible way. So thank you to the team for tying this up, but also thank you to the work to ensure that we get to speak to as many people as possible. Councillor Bennett, did you have anything for close? Councillors, motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.6 is the proposed reserve names. The recommendation is on page 41. Councillor Bennett, you're the representative on there. You'd like to move that. Do I have someone second that for her? Thank you. Councillor Mildren. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. So this is to go out for consultation to our community around a few names that have been up to the place naming committee. Now, you'll see the suggested names on here and a blurb about each of those people or those families who are involved in that. This has been through the place naming committee, and this next part of the process actually is really important because quite a few times we've done this and then actually learnt a lot more about the space or the person. So that's why it's so fantastic that this goes out to community. We've got about, I think it's 107 parks that have actually been named, which is really important. And one of them here, which I will acknowledge because we have Jean in our audience tonight, is on page 40, and that's Whitler Park, which is proposed to be named after Jean's late husband. And there's a little write-up about him here. And on each of the signs, that little write-up will go there. So our community, when they're using that space, can actually get a bit of a better idea of who has made up our community in times gone by, and really remembering the legacy of all these people and families who have had such an important role in Wodonga.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too acknowledge that the Whitler family, I've known Whitler family for a very long time through various different guises and different relationships, and I think this is absolutely terrific that we're recognising not just what Chaz Whitler's done, but the whole family name is getting a recognition through Chaz Whitler's activities and the support that he's had from his family and the things that Jean's done in the community through supporting him and other things. I think this is absolutely amazing. And probably we should have done a lot before this time, but it's better now than never. So thank you.
No, thank you. And good comments, councillors, because it's been an important part that we've been doing probably since about 2008, and I'll recognise Rod Wenman, who actually put this forward to start naming all of our parks and doing so with signage so that people could learn about our history. Councillors, the recommendation is there on page 41. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.7, a road rename, and yes, it's actually to try and make it make sense, because for those who don't know the history, Frederick Street was actually the full name of a gentleman, but Frederick Street Road just seems silly when you read it like that. So councillors, there is a recommendation there on page 45. It's a long recommendation, but it's there. Thank you, Councillor Bennett, as our representative. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett.
So very quickly, as our Mayor said, this is a bit confusing because this person's name was Frederick Street, but we've called it Frederick Street Road, which is a bit confusing. And the residents of that area have got in contact with us and said, could we work out this anomaly? So they're in support of this to actually just shorten it down to Frederick Road. So it's just going out for consultation anyway, in case someone's not impressed with that, but just process and making it a bit more easy for the community who live in that street.
I'm quite amazed it got through originally with the Register of Geographic Names, and I don't know how Google Maps would understand it, because I think it would be very confusing for Google Maps. But just one of those things that has occurred, and it's a simple change. And thanks to the Committee of the Place Names to get to go through all the process.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm conscious of the fact that yourself and the CEO want to get away to Melbourne, so I'll keep it short. I find irony in the fact that we're changing the name to Frederick Street, Frederick Road rather than Frederick Street. Given his name, I think the irony should be we should be calling it Frederick Street and be done with it. But alas, how it is how it is. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Yeah, go for it. You've got a...
Yes, and we certainly did discuss that at the place naming committee, but because of the nature of the actual road space, it makes sense to call it a road and not a street. We've had a big, lengthy discussion about this at the place naming committee.
I'm sure you have. Thank you, councillors. The recommendation is there before us on page 45. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. And here we go. We've got our one of our youngest citizens back into our gallery again. So nice to have you here. And this is a pretty important policy that sits before us. Now, councillors, there is a recommendation on page 50. Do I have someone move this recommendation for this policy to go out for 28 days? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Bennett, you get first crack.
Thank you. So this is part of our Two Cities, One Community platform. So this means that we're working in conjunction with Albury on this, which really makes sense. I've got a question about that, but I'll get to that at the end. And this is specifically around single-use plastic. So this isn't all just around plastic. It's really targeted at single-use plastics here. And the report does make an important mention here that there are exceptions where, you know, for medical reasons, people need things, and of course that's considered here. I wanted to start with an interesting stat. So in the National Waste Report last year, in Australia, we have 2.5 million tonnes of single-use plastics were produced in 2006-2017. It works out to be 103 kilos per person in a year. So when we think about single-use plastics being, you know, bags from the supermarket or cling wrap, 103 kilos per person is a hell of a lot. And of that, 12% of that is recycled. So it is an issue that internationally we're dealing with now, and certainly that community have spoken to us about. I wanted to note in the community engagement section here, we actually had Charlie, who is in our audience, come and speak to us. So I would like that to be included in the community engagement section, because it is official formal feedback. I think it's really worth having. Okay, so hopefully Charlie's feedback will be included, and we've all heard that message loud and clear. So this is going to go, this is not the final, this is the draft of this. So there's still a big opportunity for community and for council to go back through this and see if we want to change things. There's certainly been some feedback around the dates that are involved in this, and maybe we could get into, bring that a bit forward, but that will be interesting to see what goes out to our community and what our community feel we can do. Obviously, of course, there are lots of different things to consider here. One of the questions that I did have is, because this is jointly done with Albury, there are a few differences with the Albury and Wodonga policy at the moment. So, for example, with, say, events, in the Albury policy, they're mandating things, but we're encouraging. So I just wanted maybe one of the officers just to give me a bit of an explanation about those differences.
I might answer that, if I may, Madam Mayor. So I guess the message that we certainly want to portray to our community is that our council wants to lead by example. So our actions here is what we'd like people to measure us by, but we are very conscious that some of the events that we run involve some very small businesses, and that the Children's Fair would be perhaps a good example. So what we don't want to do is, in implementing a policy, we don't want to put some very small businesses out of business or make them non-financially viable in the short term. What we'd rather do is use that strong encouragement and leading by example to move them towards the position that council would like them to move towards, but not, in doing so, not risk their business. So I think we are strongly encouraging council in terms of every event that we run and we can control, we will follow the policy. But we do just want to be cautious about some of those small businesses for some of those events where they might only participate for 1 or 2 events a year. That's all.
Thanks, Mark. And I also wanted to acknowledge that there are quite a lot of businesses in Wodonga who have already actually going down this direction, which is really good. And I know Charlie has been talking to them and helping them with that process. Great thing in the report is that it acknowledges that this is a whole of council approach. This isn't just the green team, this isn't just the sustainability team that needs to do this needs to be the whole council. And on Mark's point around events, we recently ran our Ride to Work event in October, and at the last event last year we had single-use plastics, and this year we didn't have any single-use plastics. So it's great to see that we are role modelling that you can run events like this in a much more environmentally conscious way.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This policy has been designed to be introduced to our councils, Wodonga and Albury. And what I wanted to say was that we must become proficient in these practices before we can take our recommendations to the wider community. We've got to have it right. And when we take it out there, we know it's going to be right. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, thank you. And I will mention Charlie once again tonight because when we had the community forum, I was actually almost sick in the stomach when we saw the straw being pulled out of the poor turtle. So I think Charlie and many other community people will be challenging us as communities to do better things in our community and change our ways and our thinking about plastics and how we use them and how we don't use them and use renewable bags such as paper bags and boxes and things like that. So once again, it's a start. We're making champions, I hope, across the nation, across the world. But we've got to start in our own community and well done for everyone who's putting their hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll preface this with I have an understanding that it's going out for community consultations, so probably just highlight for the community to have their feedback, and this is their opportunity to have another say. Councillor Bennett talked about dates and whether we're doing things fast enough. That'll be another area I'd like the community to have a look at and see if they're in agreement with those dates are being fast enough. The CEO mentioned about encouraging vendors, these smaller vendors, to become good practitioners in this environmental conscious plastics policy that we're having. We've also got to be have it in the policy, I think, too, that there has to be a tripping point. So some of these vendors may not take up the option or offer to actually transfer to non-plastic policy. So there has to be a tripping point in there that where we can then go and procure and reward people that do have good practices in place. So they may not be someone that we vendors to us yet or suppliers to us yet, but maybe we need to have in the policy some sort of time frame about rewarding those that have good practices in place. Thank you.
Okay. I'll be supporting the motion tonight to consult with the community over the proposed new policy. I'm going to focus on bags, for example, because it's plastic bags are probably the biggest area where we need to look at changing our habits. I myself do not like plastic bags. Solving the problem of excess plastic packaging will require a larger effort than local bans on certain types of bags or packages. For one thing, bans can have unintended consequences. A recent study of California grocery store found that in the wake of laws aimed at shopping bags, sales of plastic garbage bags skyrocketed and the use of paper bags spiked too. Researchers found that about 1% of plastic bags used in Australia end up in the environment, which is 10 million per day. And if our heavier duty bags reach the oceans or other habitats, they could cause much, if not more, damage than single-use plastic bags currently do. This is because the heavy-duty bags take longer to break down. The green polypropylene bags found in many shops and supermarkets are the type of plastics made of a type of plastic made from refined oil. And whilst they do not take much energy to produce, they break down into microplastics if they find their way into the environment and cause the same issues as lightweight plastic bags. 100% cotton bags are high energy and water intensive to produce. You need 8 million tonnes of water per hectare to produce in Australia. So you would have to use that bag at least 131 times to make up for the energy to produce them. They are biodegradable and they can be used possibly thousands of times. There's also probably the best option would be, say, hemp, if not mixed with other products, or jute, which is a hessian. They're both 100% biodegradable. 80% of the world's jute comes from Bangladesh and India. It is transported by ship, although the transportation of jute requires energy, and jute in itself is relatively carbon neutral. 1 hectare consumes about 15 tonnes of carbon dioxide. So, whatever bag type you use it as many times as possible. Choose a bag made from recycled materials. Avoid bags that have printing or decorations. These can add significantly to the environment burden of the bag. Never allow a bag to become litter. Recycle, reuse and repurpose your bags. As a council, we need to adopt this policy. As a council, if we do adopt this policy, we will need to continually be mindful and aware of what the unintended consequences could be, and make sure that the alternative would be the best option for the environment. Otherwise, we'd be taking a backward step, and often better alternatives come at extra cost. So just have to be mindful of that.
Thank you, Councillor. Yep, Councillor Mildred.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Those who know my history know that I've been active in environmental stuff for a very long time, and I very much support the concept of changing the way we have single-use plastics. But I'm also very conscious that we should be doing this conscious of the impacts of what we might be changing to, and don't be just overzealous and in the pursuit of trying to remove single-use plastics as an end in itself. The end in itself is what happens afterwards. What happens afterwards is what's going to be the biggest impact in our environment in the future, and essentially we have to get this right. So I think take it step at a time, work out what we're doing and how we're doing it. That's in the broader picture of the single-use plastics issues. I note that this policy relates only to council-affected operations and council land. It's not, and council doesn't have the authority to go out and try and impose these things into the broader community at this point. That may be something that gets changed by the state government in the future, but right now it isn't. So this policy is for council activities, and I would much prefer to see council taking a view where we operate as a leader and show the way, and we get it right in all of the things that I've referred to, and that we bring people along with us rather than try and go out and enforce our view of the world and our solutions of these things onto the rest of the community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bennett, did you want to close?
Well, I'd also like to get your references, Libby, for where you got those references. I've got some other ones here. So Australia alone uses 6.9 billion plastic bags a year, and we throw out 4,000 bags a minute in Australia, which is pretty awful. I noted also that in Queensland, as a whole state, they're looking at having a single-use plastic policy, and in terms of looking at those flow-on effects for when a policy like this is introduced, our neighbour Indigo Council got on the bandwagon quite a while ago with this policy, and to my knowledge, they haven't had any negative unintended consequences, but it would be great to have a good conversation with them to see what they've learnt from this. From my knowledge, I think it's all been quite positive.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, the motion is there before us for this to go. Yep, sorry. Oh, sure. Did you want to put that out there?
I did some research prior because I didn't want to be uninformed about it. Some of the information was physics.org, News Limited, whatever, Huffington Post, ABC, and there's also a YouTube that was on the ABC website that has actually a really informative, quick YouTube video that just goes through very quickly about it's promoting reusing plastic bags, but it just gives you a really good insight very quickly as to the energy intensity of producing different types of bags, how long they need to be used before they become, I suppose, energy neutral, and it's worth having a look. So.
Okay, councillors, the motion is there before us for this to go out for a 28-day consultation. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Now we move to the late item, which is 8.9 election period policy required by legislation. Councillors, the recommendation is there that the election period policy included with the attachment be adopted. Do I have someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Seconder? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson, did you want to talk to that?
Madam Mayor, these are really the rules of engagement for someone wanting to nominate for council. In my very first term, I probably broke the rules of engagement because I didn't know the rules. And I was addressed by the CEO of the day. It was all fixed up, but it's a very important document to have because with social media and all sorts of things, it is so easy to break rules and put yourself in a bad position and maybe be disallowed, I think, to actually stand. So I'm very happy to put a new policy or update the policy and put it forward.
Thank you for your extreme honesty, Councillor Watson. Councillor Bennett, did you want to talk to it? Was there any? Yep, Councillor Mildred.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I find these sort of things rather interesting because fundamentally this document repeats essentially what's in the Act, and basically we're supposed to know as citizens of this country what their legislation is. Ignorance is no excuse. I accept that there's good reason to have a set of guidelines, which are the guidelines that are put together by the CEO and the executive that follow on from this. I see that as good practice. But if it wasn't for the fact that this is a mandatory requirement under the legislation, which is a mandatory requirement to repeat the legislation that establishes the mandatory requirement, I would probably say we shouldn't be doing this. But given that we have to do it, I will be supporting the motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, it is an interesting one, isn't it? But can't be accused of not being transparent. Councillors, did anybody wish to speak to this or speak against it? If not, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. It would have been interesting to vote against it. Item 10.1, the finance report for October. The data is there before us, and it is for information only. Was there any comments or questions? Nope. 10.2 is the planning report for October 2019. Again, for information only. Was there any comments or questions? I'd just like to highlight one if I could, councillors. Actually, the first one on the top of page 67 is the construction of a retirement village community centre. I was actually out there last week to turn that sod, and some very happy people who live out at Wodonga Gardens Retirement Village, and they are very much looking forward to their new facility, and it looks pretty good too, I must say. Councillors, 10.3 is the building report for October, again for information only. I'm going to keep going unless anybody stops me for comment. Item 10.4 is the competitive services report for October, again for information only. Any comments? Worthy of note that it does see our library come down. Item 10.5 is Assemblies of Councillors, again for information only. 10.6 is Decisions Register for information only. There are no notices of motion, no petitions, no council seal. Now, Councillor Watson, you said you had a piece of general business.
Madam Mayor, I'll probably decline to say it now, but it was to congratulate Councillor Kat Bennett on being Deputy Mayor for 12 months. I think it gives all councillors insight of what goes on with the Mayor, but also with the Executive, and how much work's involved in doing all that. So congratulations on having a go at it. I was never a great believer in deputies, but if people want to rise up and become a leader of this great city, it's a good stepping stone. So, and I wish Brian all the very best in his 12 months of reign until the elections.
Thank you very much. Okay, councillors, there is no urgent business, no questions tonight. of which it just leaves me to close this part of the public meeting because we actually have a small item to deal with in terms of confidential business. I will just highlight, in case anybody disappears, although please you are invited to meet us out in our lobby area for a cup of tea. Yes, I'm not just checking that we have those out there, thank you. It's been a bit hit miss. There is actually a special meeting to be held on Monday morning the 25th, so that's next Monday morning, for us to hear a special item. Other than that, we will see you for the Christmas December meeting if you don't stick around, and I'm looking forward to the very attractive Christmas jumpers, councillors, and ties and bow ties and the other bits and bobs. You've started planning your outfit. Excellent. So those in the gallery, if you bear with us, please feel free to stay out there, have a cup of tea. We'll join you just shortly. We just need to deal with a confidential item. Councillors, can I have somebody move that we close the meeting? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Does anybody need to speak against that? If not, I'll put the motion. Councillors, all those in favour? Councillor Mildred, you okay? All those in favour? Yep, sorry, thank you. Yep. You okay? Emily, thank you. Councillors, it leaves us to adopt the recommendation from the closed council meeting and that motion be adopted. Can I have someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. And that leaves me just to close the meeting and invite everybody to join us on Monday the 9th of December at our normal time at 6 p.m. Other than that, there is a special meeting at 9 a.m. next Monday morning here in the chamber. Councillors, staff, thank you very much.